am the same age as Betty Aquino, who I had the privilege of seeing compete. She was the first Black gymnast I saw compete at Worlds in 1991, not too far from where I lived at the time. I was just in high school, and I was like, oh my God, who is that? Where is she? Wasn't in the papers. She wasn't, it was all about Shannon Miller and Kim Zemes, all of these people. And I'm just like laser beam focused on her. And the next year, Dominique Dawes came about. So, but I am that age, so I did not see them as I was growing up. And so when Gabby came on the scene, news outlets started talking about the history of Blacks in gymnastics. And that's when I first saw the name Dianne Durham. That's when I first saw the name Lucy Collins. So Lucy Collins was the first Black gymnast, Black female gymnast to make the U.S. Olympic team. Unfortunately, it was in 1980s. She was unable to compete due to the boycott for the Moscow Olympics. And then Dianne Durham was a 3-time national champion. She was the first junior national champion. She did that twice. And then she won senior national championship. She was a shoo-in for the Olympic team. She was actually the last gymnast to beat Mary Lou Retton. And she was injured at the 1984 Olympic trials, and she was unable to compete in her very last event. And then there was just some confusion about what impact withdrawing from the competition would have on her eligibility to make the Olympic team. And it ended up not in her favor. And she did not she was not able to make the Olympic team. And she was one of the best gymnasts in the world. So she passed on in 2021. That was the same year as the postponed now Tokyo Olympics. Same year that Simone Biles did her Gold Over America tour. And the same year that my daughter got back into gymnastics. So I'm trying to just kind of pour into her, teach her about this person or that person. So she knew Simone, she knew Jordan, and she knew, a couple of others. Simone had this beautiful tribute during the show, and where she showed love for other gymnasts from everywhere. And they were up on the screen, and then Dianne's picture showed up, and I clutched my heart, and I said, oh my goodness. And my daughter was like, who's that? And I'm like, oh, I haven't taught you about Dianne Durham. Oh my goodness. And so we go home, and you're pulling out Ebony articles and watching old videos and all of these things. And so she knows about Dianne Durham. And then a few weeks later, she's in a competition, and my daughter is long and lanky. She's built very differently than I was. And at this particular competition, she wins beam. And on the way home, we're just kind of decompressing. And I said, boy, you remind me of Betty Aquino on beam. And nowhere near skill level, right? But just her form. And she's like, who's Betty Aquino? And I'm like, okay. The weave. Yes, people. So I'm like, we have to.
I think it's just making your skin crawl because you don't know about the people.
It's a tragedy.
Yes.
She has to know who Betty is.
Yes.
Right.
I'm like, we have some major
which is very common. I mean, Lotus not knowing that was it's a very common thing for a lot of younger gymnasts and Black gymnasts to not know who was here before. It's it's so normal.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but
Yeah.
it's so normal. But it's changing.
Well,
It's
right.
changing.
Well, now they will have an encyclopedia because that's what we ended up doing. We created this book, and I really did want it to include lots of different types of gymnasts and artists, because it starts actually with Alexandra Nicholson, who's a trampolinist. She's a trampolinist, and she was the first Black gymnast to compete outside of the United States, representing the United States. And she was like on the cover of Jet magazine in the 70s, and nobody knows her name, or not enough people, I should say, know her name. And then number 2 in the book, and it goes basically in chronological order, number 2 in the book is Wendy Hilliard. So Wendy Hilliard is absolutely a historian and a change maker, still a dynamic coach. But she was a trailblazer, a world champion. I mean, she did all of the things in her day in the early 70s. And we're talking right as Title IX came to be, right when girls and women were federally, legally able to compete in as many sports as boys and men. And so they are true pioneers, and we would not be here without them. And so